In this lesson, we're going to take what we've been reviewing about one-step equations and we're going to apply it to two-step equations. So the process that I talked about in our previous lessons with one-step equations that process is going to be even more important when we're doing these two-step problems. So the steps you want to follow with two-step equations, you want to still start out by locating your variable. So talking about where that variable is at. Is it to the left or right of your equal sign? What variable is it? Is it an X? Is it a Y? Is it an N or a B? And then what you want to do is undo your addition and subtraction. And then undo your multiplication and division. And then finally, you can still check your answers like we've been doing before. So it's kind of like taking our one-step equations and taking two of those and putting them together in one problem. But you always want to focus on the addition and subtraction first and then the multiplication and division. So when you take a look at number 1, you can see that the variable we're working with here is p. And remember, our goal here is still the same. We want to isolate that p so that it's by itself, so that we get an answer of p equals a number. So our goal is going to be to get rid of the 5 in this problem and to get rid of the 8, to move them to the other side. So in order to do that, we're going to focus on our addition first. And at first glance, you might be tempted to say our addition is the 8 because it says plus 8, but that is not the case. So remember, when you have 8 and p side by side, 8p means 8 times p. So that 8 is actually the multiplication. So you want to do the 8 second. So we're going to undo the 5. And we do this the same way we did with one-step equations where we do the opposite or the inverse operation. So the opposite of 5 would be minus 5, a negative 5. And we're still going to do this to both sides of the equation. 5 minus 5 is 0, so we're still going to mark it out and bring down the 8p equals, and then 77 minus 5 is 72. So very similar to how we did the one-step equations with just a few differences. So again, our end result is to isolate the variable, to get this variable by itself. So I still need to keep working my problem because I have that 8 there. And remember, 8p means 8 times p. So we're going to do the inverse or the opposite. The opposite of multiplying by 8 would be to divide both sides by 8. And remember, anytime you're doing an operation to one side of your equation, you need to do it to the other side. 8 divided by 8 is 1, and you can bring down your p, equals, and then 72 divided by 8 is 9. Now remember, the 1p, we don't have to put the 1 in front of it. We just write it as p equals 9, because that 1 is like an invisible 1. We know it's there. We don't have to write it. So I think my answer is p equals 9. But just like with one step, I can check my answer. So we'll take that original equation, 5 plus 8p equals 77. But now I think p is 9. So now I'm going to replace p with 9. 5 plus 8 times 9 equals 77. And remember, when we replace a variable with a number, we always put that number in parentheses. So now I can see I need to multiply 8 times 9. So that's 5 plus 8 times 9 is 72 equals 77. 5 plus 72 is 77 equals 77, which is a true statement. 77 does equal 77. So that's how I know my answer, p equals 9, is the correct answer. Take a look at number 2. So my variable in number 2 is n. You can see it's to the right of my equal sign. It's to the left of my equal sign. It has a negative in front of the n. So remember that is similar to saying -1. And then that kind of looks like a plus sign. Here we go, -1, and we're adding 2, so plus 2. So in this problem, what I need to move to the other side or to get rid of so that the n is by itself is I need to get rid of that negative sign that's in front of the n and the plus 2. And once I do that, it will all be the n will be isolated. And we start always by getting rid of or moving the addition and subtraction. So I'm adding 2. So I'm going to do the inverse and I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And bring down your negative n. 2 minus 2 is 0, so we just mark it out. Equals 7 minus 2 is 5. Now, a lot of times students are tempted to stop here because it looks like the n is isolated, but we have to get rid of everything, including that negative. And that's why sometimes it's easier to write in that -1 so that you can remember, oh, I've got to move that -1. And that -1n is like saying -1 times n. So the opposite of multiplying times -1 would be to divide both sides by -1. -1 divided by -1 is 1, so that's just n equals. And 5 divided by -1, 5 divided by 1 is 5, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So I think my answer is n equals -5, but we can check that. So we're going to take our original equation of -n plus 2 equals 7, and now I think I know what n is, so I'm going to replace n with -5. Now be careful here when you're replacing it. So I have a negative in my equation, and then parentheses, I'm going to replace n with -5 plus 2 equals 7. So make sure you don't forget one of those negative signs. They both need to be there. I have a negative sign for my equation, and there's a negative sign in my value I'm substituting in. Well, I know that a negative times a negative here, a negative times a negative is a positive, so that makes that a +5 plus 2 equals 7, and 5 plus 2 is 7 equals 7, which is a true statement, so that's how I know my answer, n equals -5, is correct. Go ahead and highlight number 3, and let's take a look at number 4. So number 4, our variable is m, which is on the left of the equal sign, and it's within a division. It's m divided by 3. And then I also have plus 2 attached to it. So remember, with our steps, we want to focus on the addition and subtraction first. So looking at that plus 2, to move that plus 2 to the other side, we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So that's m divided by 3. 2 minus 2 is 0. We mark it out. Equals 0 minus 2 is -2. Then I need to move the 3 to the other side by doing the inverse. So the opposite of divide by 3 would be to multiply by 3. And remember, we talked about this in our one-step equations. When you're doing m divided by 3 times 3, the way it looks, a lot of times we're tempted to just say this 3 times 3 is 9. But you're not just multiplying that part. You're multiplying this whole side. M divided by 3 times 3. And what that does, it just cancels out everything except for the m. So you're just left with m. Equals -2 times 3 is -6. So I think my answer is m equals negative 6. But we can check that. So our original equation of m divided by 3 plus 2 equals 0. But now I think I know what m is, so I replace m with negative 6 divided by 3 plus 2 equals 0. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2 plus 2 equals 0. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0 equals 0, which is a true statement, so I can be confident in my answer of m equals negative 6. Go ahead and highlight number 5. So remember, number 5 is going to be similar to number 2, where you have that negative 1 you need to get rid of. And then go ahead and highlight number 6. Be careful on number 6, your variable's on the other side. It's on the left instead of the right, but you're still going to follow the same procedure. You just need to remember at the end, you flip your answer so that it says x equals. And let's take a look at number 7. So number 7, we still have a two-step equation, but it's going to be with a rational number. So with this one, our variable is k, which has a plus 8 and a times 5/3. So we still want to focus on our addition or subtraction first. So focusing on that plus 8 first. The opposite of plus 8 is minus 8 on both sides. We're going to bring down the 5/3 k. 8 minus 8 is 0, so we mark it out. Equals 3 minus 8 is negative 5. Now to get rid of or to move the 5/3, so remember that's 5/3 times k. So the opposite would be, instead of multiplying by 5/3, we're going to divide by 5/3. And 5/3 divided by 5/3 is 1, so that's k equals. And then negative 5 divided by 5/3, and you can put that in your calculator, is negative 3. So I think my answer is k equals negative 3. But we're going to check it. Taking the original equation, 5/3 k plus 8 equals 3. But I think I know what k is, so I'm going to replace k with negative 3, making sure you put it in parentheses. And then again, you can use a calculator here. So 5/3 times negative 3 is negative 5 plus 8 equals 3. And then negative 5 plus 8 is 3 equals 3, which is true, which is why I can be confident in my answer of k equals negative 3. Now remember, when you go back and you check it, if you're not getting that true statement, go back and look at your problem and rework it. See if you can find your mistake. And go ahead and highlight number 8. So it's going to be similar to number 7. And then on the next page, we're going to look at some similar problems, but very different at the same time. So we're still going to look at two-step equations. Your steps are similar. So if you notice with these, I had division in the first set of problems we just looked at. But with these problems, so if you look over here at this general example, the difference between these is that this whole side, this whole left side, is being divided by. In the previous examples, what we looked at, you only had your variable being divided by. So the way that these are different is if this whole side, your whole left side or your whole right side is being divided by, you want to get rid of that division first. So that's the only time you're going to get rid of division first, is if a whole side of equation is being divided by. So looking at number 9, we can see this whole left side is being divided by 3. So my variable, still locating it, it is on the left. It's got plus 8 and divide by 3. But I want to get rid of that divide by 3 first. So instead of dividing by 3, we're going to do the opposite and multiply by 3, just like with the other equations. And just like with the other ones, what happens when you multiply by 3 on the left is it cancels out everything except for the x plus 8. And then equals 3 times 3 is 9. So once you get rid of that division, you really just have a one-step equation. So on this one, we just have to get rid of plus 8 by doing minus 8 on both sides. So that's x equals 1. And we can still check these. So if I take that original x plus 8 divided by 3 equals 3, and I replace x with 1, so that's 1 plus 8 divided by 3 equals 3. 1 plus 8 is 9 divided by 3 equals 3. And 9 divided by 3 is 3 equals 3, which is true. So my answer is x equals 1. But remember, we only get rid of division first if the whole side of the equation is being divided by. Highlight number 10 and 11, and let's look at 12. So 12 is going to be the same thing as 9, except your variable is on the right side. So you do have this whole right side is being divided by 7. So we have to get rid of that divided by 7 first by doing the opposite. The opposite of dividing by 7 is to multiply by 7. So negative 3 times 7 is negative 21 equals, and then remember on the right side when I multiply by 7, what happens is it eliminates everything except for that negative 4 plus q. And then I'm isolating the q, so I need to move that negative 4 over, and the opposite would be to add 4. Remember, we always want to do the opposite when we're moving things across the equal sign. Negative 21 plus 4 is negative 17 equals negative 4 plus 4 is 0, so that just marks out, and then you bring down your q. So that would be q equals negative 17. So then we're going to check that answer. So negative 3 equals negative 4 plus q over 7. But then I think I know that q is negative 17, so I'm going to replace q with negative 17. And then that's negative 3 equals negative 4 minus 17 is negative 21 over 7. That's negative 3 equals negative 21 divided by 7 is negative 3. So I can be confident in that answer of q equals negative 17. Now for these last 4, I want you to go ahead and highlight these. So the only difference in these is you're going to have to use your keywords to write the equation before you solve it. So you're looking at words for, remember, is represents equals, quotient would be division, half is divide by 2, less than or subtracting, times is multiplication. So you're going to translate those and then solve them. So not just translating, translate and solve. So you should still get an answer of a variable equals a number after you solve it.